And good afternoon. We are live on Facebook Live with the experts, Future Kane and Aaron Heffernan. And my name is Tina Boyle White. I am the host of the Bridge Broadcast Show. And I'm excited to be here because this has been a long time coming, a conversation that we've been waiting to have for some time now. And I'm just honored to have Future Kane back with me. She and I had on an earlier date in this year, and I even think it was pre COVID, that we were talking about social emotional learning. And here we are back today. And I'll give her an opportunity to introduce herself in a second. But I'm excited. The focus really of the Bridge Broadcast Show is really to focus on helping people to get from where they are to where they want and need to be in life. And, really helping people to get from one point to the next point. And, today is no different. We are dealing with a lot of things such as COVID. We're still dealing with COVID. And now we're dealing with the social unrest, and we call that today COVID-19 and racialized trauma, responding to the social and emotional needs of children during extraordinary times. And this is truly extraordinary times. I've never seen a time like this before. And today and tomorrow, we're just going to have a conversation between my guest, Future Kane and Aaron Heffernan, and maybe tomorrow, Dara and Tandari. So I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves. Now, let me adjust this as we are focusing on. I wanted you to see the flyer, so you want to find us out there on Facebook Live. Let me see if this can work so that I can show you my lovely guest. All right. Yes. And Future Kane, can you introduce yourself to our audience?
Good evening, good evening. Here's what I'll say. I don't like titles or degrees to define a person, so this is how I would introduce myself. I'm a mom. I'm a mom of 2 elementary school students, a little child going into kindergarten, and a daughter going into 3rd grade. I have also dedicated my life, literally 20 years, to students with disabilities, working with students who had autism and hearing their first words, all the way to an assistant principal, and then currently the director of social and emotional learning and community outreach at the school district where I'm at. In addition, I think I'm technically a certified yoga instructor. So that is everything I live and breathe. And I weave that into all that I do professionally and personally. So that's what I would say. That's who I am.
That is awesome. That's just right down where people need you to be, where they can connect. You just happen to have these wonderful titles to support really who you are. Thank you and welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Can you introduce yourself?
Future, my name is Aaron Heffernan. I'm a child and family therapist. I work with Jewish Family Services here in Milwaukee. Before JFS, I worked at Children's Hospital Community Services, specializing in child trauma and child therapy, working with a lot of kids in the foster care system before I came to JFS to make a big shift largely to mental health services for schools. So this is how I got to know Future. I've had the great pleasure of working alongside her in the Brown Deer School District, where my agency I'm one of 2 therapists that are embedded in the schools. So Future and I have crossed paths a couple times in our lives, and share a friendship and a partnership in our care and interest in helping kids in this community. Yeah, as far as titles, I am a husband and a father of 3 teenagers, and been working with kids for over 20 years. I was a wraparound crisis worker before I became a therapist, and been, like everybody, responding to these interesting times in as flexible a way as possible. And so I'm honored to be invited. I love talking about child resiliency and things that impact the way our kids function and how that intersects with child development, which is something that I think is something that kind of unifies us all, our care and love for children. And so it's in community that will get through this. It's in community that will evolve together and grow together. And so it's platforms like this, Tina, that you've created that just make me very happy to be invited to. And so thanks for having me.
You are certainly welcome. I'm glad to find the experts that can help us navigate this journey and understand really what's going on. And think about this topic here. Um, this topic, we hit the topic, COVID-19 and racialized trauma. That's a big title that we collectively have decided to come up with. And then our subtitle is Responding to the Social and Emotional Needs of Children During Extraordinary Times. Talk to me, I'll start with Future. When you think about that title, what does all of that mean to you?
Whew, okay, where do I begin? So basically, obviously, we sit before everybody as people of color, and we can't discount and not say the world in which we perceive it and what our reality is very different than some people who look very different than us. And with that comes possibly microaggressions. I'll give you an example of one. Many times I've had people say, wow, you sound really white, or you speak really good English. And I would say then, why are you saying that, right? Are you generalizing, should people of color not speak really well? Or are you stereotyping that people of color should speak a certain way? Because obviously this is how I speak, and we all speak very differently. But to constantly be inflicted with those things that people view you as less than gets tiring. And then there's other traumas in which the kids have to face. I could go down the data, and Wisconsin, and Aaron, you know this because we've presented this to the staff before. Wisconsin continuously is labeled from data as one of the worst places to raise a child who is Black continuously. And it's because the traumas that are inflicted on the Black community. And those traumas are high incarceration rates. Those traumas are large gaps in the wealth. Those traumas are large gaps in the achievement. Those traumas are the punitive discipline that they have to face. And girls being 6 times more likely, if they're African American, as opposed to if the child is white, to be suspended. And same with boys. So it's those traumas and the constant not possibly being perceived as valued as others. And then also you have to look at the ACEs score. And Aaron, I know you could speak more to this, but if you look at what other traumas have they had, do they have both parents in the family? Do they have a parent who's been psychologically, physically, emotionally abusive? Do they have both parents in the household, or has one been incarcerated? So those are all the numerous traumas that then get built on the individual as a child that they have to live with and try to process, where their parents might not even know how to process it, but yet then we expect them to come into a classroom or work in our community and present as what the world would perceive them to be as normal and fit in a particular box. So I would say that's kind of a wrap up of what I look at it as, is the traumas that we're talking about. And it's not just people of color. There's many, everybody has faced them. But in the time of what's going on right now, the civil unrest, we see the large gaping inequities for the children who are, the indigenous people of color right now. Aaron, I'm going to pass it to you because you have a lot more knowledge than I do, especially in this area.
Thank you for going first, Future. I appreciate that. Yeah, speaking to achievement gap and also health disparities between communities of color and the majority population. I do think it is the mental health community has a moral imperative to address health disparities in the way that is trauma informed, trauma sensitive, but also is aware of history of structural oppression and systemized racism, especially in Southeast Wisconsin, as Future is pointing out. Just look at the health disparities, look at the housing practices that have happened since the 40s and 50s that have created what's been called a hyper-segregated city.
Right.
What's gives me hope, and what is a sincere honor for me to be a part of, is the place where these issues come into collision. The collision points are hospitals and schools, where communities have to come together. And it's at these collision points that change gets made, in my opinion. And so a partnership between large institutions like school districts and hospitals, medium-sized institutions like outpatient, faith-based social service organizations, and also many, many little private practitioners who are doing work, to me is one way to create indigenous leadership, indigenous pockets of healing that are unique to the needs of this region and unique to the talent in this region, and offer hope for a way forward. It's not all up to one hospital. It's not all up to one school district. It's work that all of us have to bear together. And so for me, I feel my vocation has been in working with children. And again, that's why I'm so glad to be invited here. It is quite a title we're putting our arms around here: COVID-19 and racialized trauma, how it affects the social and emotional functioning of kids who are already stressed. And so so I'm glad we have 2 nights to do this, because this is not something to be taken lightly. My field of mental health, I think, has really been coming around in the last 5 to 10, 15 years in the trauma-informed care movement, and as Future references the ACEs, Adverse Child Experiences study, that shows how early experience impacts child functioning, but really when taken through the lens of structural oppression and racism, we see how devastating the impact of health disparities, lack of access to good grocery stores, fear of eviction from a stressed mom,
loss of job,
the presence of rats in your alley. I mean, on the very ground practical level, lack of access to a laptop, what that does to child development. For me, I come back to, as a white person, I have to be careful when I think about what universal principles are uniting all of us. That's an easy way, I think, for white people to just slip into what Future talks about in terms of microaggressions. And so I've put a lot of thought in this myself, and I think about that there may be some universal child development principles that kids share in common, that adults can help with. And as I look at how COVID-19 and racialized trauma, the disruption that these two forces are doing in the developing lives of children, anyway, that's where I feel I can be of service, and it's only going to be alongside people like Future and you, Tina, that this is going to happen. So that's enough for me.
You really said it, Aaron. It is a big topic, and we made this title, like, it's so big for us to begin to wrap our arms around. Having been in social work and now education for over 27 years. I don't do what you all do, but I understand exactly where you are. And I've had these thoughts, and you think about these things, you talk about microaggression, and you start talking about the achievement gap, and how all these things collide. I like how you said that these places, the collision point, schools are a collision point where, these things happen. And as we thought about it, it's this COVID thing, and I call it a thing because we don't know what it is. It's really, you think about the achievement gap just in traditional, the trajectory of the achievement gap. The kids start off together and it just widens like
Mhm.
quickly. And now I'd like for you to tell me, how do you think this is going to impact the achievement gap with all these things that are going on? Systematized or systemic oppression, microaggressions. How is that? How do you see that making things worse for this widening gap for people of color?
Mhm. Okay, so, and Aaron, just jump in at any time. Okay, so what I'll say is we have to look at where are the people of color communities usually centralized, right? And what I would say is those are also the school districts that have the least funding. They have the least funding and they have the most needs, whether it's federal and state funding or whether it's actual funding and fundraisers that the parents and the guardians and the community could do for that school. So when we went into COVID, you have to consider all the districts in all of our United States, right? We went in, and I'll speak of the district that I live in. So the district that I live in and send my children to, the people in my community probably have 2 or 3 computers or iPads. That's one situation. So it was easy for them to tell all the parents and children, okay, so in a week, we're going to be online right now. Please get on and do your academic work. Where in the district that I serve, it's over 50% free and reduced lunch. And then we have MPS, Milwaukee Public Schools, which is even higher free and reduced students, which is high poverty level. So to say we're switching to virtual immediately, because that's what it was, an abrupt one day, we're now switching to virtual, to families who, one, don't have internet, and to families who, two, don't have computers, is a tall feat to ask people to do. Because then as a district, in order to get them virtual, we have to provide them with the tools to be virtual. And that took time. So we can't get 600 or 700 Chromebooks out in a week. It's going to take time to figure out who doesn't have internet, who needs internet, who needs a Chromebook, how many family members are in that house. And then when you're going through all of that, now how many weeks, how many days have we lost? I know personally for our school district, we had kids at the beginning that were literally doing their work on their phones because that's all they had. Now, could you imagine as a kid doing your work? That's how resilient they are, right? And we need to showcase and we need to celebrate that. They cared so much about their schooling that they said, I will do it on this little phone, even though it will be impossible or nearly impossible for me to read it, but I still want to be engaged. I still want to go to my class and I still want to do my work. So you have to look at that. Then you also have to look at a lot of the areas that we're talking about with the inequities. What about food? So now we've seen the data, right? There's a lot of people on unemployment right now. If you're on unemployment and you don't have a job, there's bigger needs. And those are Maslow's hierarchy, basic needs. So now I'm worried about where am I getting money for an electricity? Where am I getting money to pay for my kids to eat? Because also what Milwaukee did was a lot of their pantries were shut down in the middle of COVID. So a family couldn't even go to all the pantries to get food or get clothing or get basic needs because some of them had shut down. So I know in our district, we didn't have a pantry. So we literally had a makeshift, and thankfully we have a supportive staff that said we will bring whatever we could bring. So we partnered with one of our churches, Rise MKE Church. Thank you, bless you, Pastor Jay. And he said we could make a makeshift pantry here. That's what he said. So we did a makeshift pantry. We had a fundraiser of people bringing in one day a whole bunch of supplies because we knew there was going to be parents who were going to be greatly impacted, and the kids aren't going to want to learn and log on to anything online and learn anything if they are hungry and don't even know where their next meal is coming from.
Yeah, I share that same concern about basic needs because this is a real danger of losing thousands of children in poverty, children of color, because food and shelter come first. Yep. Before education. And so this where the schools used to be a place to come for meals, there was in my experience in the MPS schools we were involved in, that was pretty consistent throughout COVID. Kids could still come through the school year and through most of the summer to get lunch. But I haven't heard if there's a consistent message of that being continued. I'm not sure. I can't speak for MPS about how and whether free and reduced lunch is going to be able to be picked up by at every MPS or every school. So yeah, I think these two topics are obviously linked. COVID, you know, the impact of COVID and the impact of racialized trauma, because for different communities, discussion about COVID is a different discussion.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what makes me so grateful to be in community mental health, where at Jewish Family Services, no one's turned away. And you don't have to be Jewish to be a client. And we see everybody. And so I have seen how COVID has impacted all levels of socioeconomic status, all cultures and all ethnicities. Also been lucky to see how different families have been coping. And I don't say that to minimize how much people are hurting right now.
Mm-hmm.
That's another, I think, form of aggression to oppressed communities, to say, oh, well, Black folks are resilient. It's true, but it's too easy to say that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, so this conversation, I think, is an important one, because I think COVID has really brought into sharp focus the moral imperative right now of addressing systemic racism in this way. To answer your question, Tina, a part of me has a hard time holding on to hope, because I see how the disparities in many ways are being brought into starker relief right now since the end of March, since the schools shut down. That doesn't mean we stop. We're never going to stop, and this won't be solved in our lifetime.
No.
So
this is amazing. I mean, it's so much. This is, it leveled the playing field, and it opened up so much. I mean, you're saying this. There's a moral imperative here. There's so much. There's so many places we can go. Conversation. The socioeconomics. You've seen it. Seen people impacted from every socioeconomic level. Talk to me about what you've seen. You know, either Aaron or Future. What are you seeing? You know, being in this social emotional.
One thing that seems to, Future, tell me if this has been your experience. I know you've been in touch with your students throughout the summer, and you've been with your families. One thing that seems to be a common thread across every household is effort on the part of parents to get some kind of predictability, some kind of routine in this time of uncertainty. That seems to be like just such a basic biological and thing that parents are trying to, when parents themselves are on shaky, uncertain ground. So I don't know, like, I'm finding myself with all the parents I see and talk to on the phone, because we're not doing hardly any face-to-face. Only with very, very high crisis families are we doing face-to-face. We're doing some family and child therapy in the community outside, wraparound kids and kids who are in different community-based services, but for the most part, it's remote. Parents just doing this heroic effort to try to create some predictability and routine. This is what all the American pediatric websites and children's hospital websites try to get some kind of routine and predictability in a time when things are, as Future said in the beginning of this conversation, you know, just so, or when we were off camera or whatever, just so unpredictable and so on. So I don't know if that's your experience, Future, but across every household I've seen, it's like, how do I get my kid to get out of bed before 1 in the afternoon? What, is there something I can do to get us all to come to the table together? And my kids miss their friends. How do I do this safely? And my teenager isn't listening to me, and he's gone missing again because he wants to see his friends. How do I deal with a kid's natural impulse to be with his or her friends, and how that puts our family in some danger when they're sneaking out to go do whatever and bring God knows what back in the house? How do I parent through that? I don't know. Are you seeing things like that, Future?
Okay, so I would agree with you to an extent. I think that I think the hero word is exactly what it is, because these teachers I felt bad when we went, right? Because you have teachers who are parents who essentially never went to school to be a teacher, and they were forced essentially to be a teacher. So kudos and gratitude needs to be expressed for that. I think that every single parent that I've personally communicated with has had the best interest of their kid in mind, right? They just wanted their kid to let's do our best to meet your needs, whether it's getting up at 1:00 in the afternoon, because I think some of the kids were sleeping in, because guess what? That's the only time then they had by themselves. If you're stuck in a house, and if I sleep in and I'm staying up late, then those hours of 11 to 3 that I'm staying up are the only time I get by myself, technically, right? With everybody else not up. Okay. So it's kind of, I get it. I'm not mad at them as long as you could get on your cycle and do your work. So I think every parent just wanted a routine, but there was a lot of parents who couldn't get a routine because we had a lot of essential workers too. So essentially, if I'm going to work all day, but you're supposed to be on video conference or logging in during this time, then it's even more stress when I get home, because now you've done nothing, because I couldn't be home because I had to be at my job. But then now I have a second job of trying to help educate you through all this stuff when I get home, on top of feeding you and doing all the other stuff. I mean, it was a big feat for people. So I think that's what I saw. I saw them be totally in support of the school and just be candid in where we fell short. And I appreciate that. I'm not mad at them, right? Just say what it is and be transparent so we can be better. Know what we could be better at if you're not going to be honest. I also think that what I saw from every parent was, do you know how appreciative? I can't tell you how appreciative they were. Super appreciative when we reached out to them, like, thank you, thanking us for even thinking about and calling them. But at the end of the day, we've said it before, all of us, Tina and Aaron, people have to stop in this world. And it's not even the United States, I would say this world. There's a quote pretty much in Ubuntu. It's an African saying that it's, I am because we are. And the sooner, and Tina, you might know it, the sooner we can all say, I'm putting my ego to the side. It's not just about me, because my actions or lack thereof have a major impact on the community and the sooner we will be able to move forward with these barriers, move forward with these inequities, move forward with truly caring about the children and the adults even that we serve, for the betterment, so everybody could not only just survive, but thrive.
That's, oh gosh, that's such a mouthful of I am because we are. I mean, and the betterment of everybody. I think these times have really just confronted, all of us in the face with the things that we're dealing with. So now we got COVID that's opened up these doors to these racial inequities. And now we have companies who are responding and saying, what can I do? White people are saying, how can I understand? And we have all these conversations going on. And, it took something so big to, as well as George Floyd's, the killing of him, just all of it together, just open up this box that had been closed shut for many years. And not, I don't even know how to say it, but not even, you talk about the privilege piece, and, it's privilege from a point that, because I don't have to deal with it, I don't really have to open it up, but it hit us all in the face. And how did it hit you, after seeing, the death of George Floyd? How did it hit you, Future? How did it hit you, Aaron? And then how did it connect back to the children we serve? That's a big question.
Okay, so here's what I'm gonna say. I think before George Floyd, it had hit me, right? Like I could go back to Rodney King. We were watching all this, right? So it's not like, ooh, George Floyd was the I think George Floyd was the straw that broke the camel's back, as people say, right? But you had Arbery back when, what was it? It was before COVID, before we even went in. And then you had Breonna Taylor. Then you had Nina Pop, right? There was just all these people, and then George Floyd hit. And I would say George Floyd was, for me, the straw that broke the camel's back. And I said, I can't sit here. I've been uncomfortably comfortable sitting and not being a true activist like I should have, when I know that 43 years ago, my mom fought for the same thing. And I said, I couldn't not. I couldn't just sit here and be quiet and just watch it all go by. And it impacted me the even worse, I would say. The one day my daughter came to me, and she knew, right? I try to just tell her, right, to be aware of everything because of all the things that I've had to experience in life. So I don't want her to be sheltered. I need her to be knowledgeable. And we were talking the one day, and it was days, I think I had 6 hours of Zoom that day, which was awful. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. So I'm trying to, educate my kids, and then 6 hours of Zoom, which is just mentally draining in itself, why all this is going on top of it. And she said to me one day, she said, Mommy, I said, yeah. And this was not even that long before I now had to be professional and go into a Zoom call. And she said, I want to be white. And I looked at her and I said, come again, right? Because I don't want to make judgments. So tell me more, right? Why are you making that statement? Well, she's like, because I'm Black and I don't want to die. Now that's powerful coming from an 8-year-old. And I wanted to weep. And I wanted to weep because this is an 8-year-old, right? She understands. Her innocence at that point was taken because she understands and literally doesn't even want to be the beautiful self that she is, because she knows if she's white, this wouldn't even be happening to her. It wouldn't even have to be a thought that she would have to think of. So I think it was that moment that pushed me, that I said, okay, Future, you have to get online and use your platform that you have to educate instead of retaliate, to help educate my friends, who I have a lot of white friends, to educate them. So I started like a whole text thread just trying to educate them. I started educating parents that my kids go to school with, on top of being super active on LinkedIn. And I said, okay, Future, are you willing to lose it all? Because that's the question, right? Because there's some people who will, oh, I'm jogging in the marathon. Oh, this is too rough, so I'm going to tap out, right? I'm going to back out. And I said, I don't care, right? If somebody, I am willing to literally lose it all, because at the end of the day, yes, my profession matters, but it doesn't matter more than my child. It doesn't matter more than my child's well-being. So if me speaking up and being an activist for what I know is right, because it's human rights, then so be it. But I can't sit here quietly anymore. So I think that's what happened. And then it was a roller coaster of emotions, right? I was a mess, an emotional mess on some days. And I didn't hide it. I didn't go in my room and pretend, mommy's okay, or just laying down. I let my kids see it. And I let my kids see it because we in society live on this negative or positive emotions, but there's no such thing in my mind. And all emotions tell a true story of a person, and you need to be able to sit with all those. So I would say that's what I did. I was just blatant and transparent with them, the good, the ugly, and the bad, and helping her to understand this is what's going on in life. You need to be proud of who you are, and mommy's going to be here trying to make this world a better place for you, because it is not right, and you shouldn't have to go through anything that I or people before me have had to deal with.
Wow, that's powerful, Future. And as I'm thinking about everything you're saying, I just remember you was like, am I willing to lose it all? And I remember when I first met you, we met on LinkedIn, and we were talking about white fragility at that time. And I need to go back and look at that, because we were really tapping into some things pre everything happened. Just really Interesting. You're right. You can't just tap out.
No.
You're and to have a child. I don't have a child to say that to me. That I can imagine. I didn't even know how to deal with it as a middle-aged African
Hmm.
American woman. Just like you, just being a ball of emotions
Hmm.
and and we'll come back to it. I'll hear from you, Aaron, and we'll come back to how we deal with this with our students. You said how you deal with it as a parent, and you have that closer relationship. Aaron, tell me about your response to all of this, and kind of.
Well, the news about George Floyd was obviously in the middle of COVID happening and all this other adjustments that I was making personally and with the family. And so the news of the killing and torture of George Floyd, I'll be honest, I was numb to it, and I can say it was COVID numbness. But that's something that I get to have it and with white privilege and white fragility as a conditioned response to protect myself with my own sort of emotional airbag and go to numb. Doesn't But it makes me way less effective as a therapist and as a parent to stay in a place of numbness and overwhelm. And to get work through that, I had to feel my fear. I live in Milwaukee, and get the notice about curfews and talk to kids that I work with about their neighborhoods and what they were seeing, and encounters with the National Guard and helicopters and things like that. I guess for me, it's not okay to go to a place of numb, but I think that is a pretty common white person response, and I have that luxury to do that. My kids don't have to worry the same ways and have the same conversations that Future and her daughter have had. That doesn't let me and my family off the hook. What I've sort of thought about through these last weeks and months is work that I don't really want to do, which is talking with other white people. Work with confronting racism in my white clients for fear of losing them as patients. That's work that I haven't wanted to do. And I have that luxury again to pivot to something else because there's plenty of trauma to go around. But it's on white people to address white fragility. It's on white people to not just march and silence is violence and all that, which is good and necessary, but it's on white people to take this on alongside our Black friends.
You know what? Thank you, Aaron, so much for being transparent and saying that. As a white male, as one who has privilege, and I'm really glad of our panel today. In Future, you shared with me that you come from a biracial, or you're biracial, and you come from. I can't remember which one was white.
My mom was Italian, and my dad was African American.
Yeah, and so it's so interesting. As Aaron has just said, I'm afraid of the conversation. Aaron, you just expressed that exactly what Future said. Am I willing to lose it all? And it's a big step to be in a place to having the possibility of losing something that could really, really that's dear to white people. And so, um, let's talk before we wrap up today, and we'll finish this conversation tomorrow. In that frame, how do you begin to help our Black kids, our white kids? How do we begin to help our students deal with some of these very same things that we're dealing with amongst ourselves as the panel, as you all are the experts? How do you begin to have those conversations with kids?
Something that kids have shown me through COVID and through this renewed awareness of racialized trauma and structural oppression, something that teenagers have reminded me is that they are absolutely essential. Literally, some of the kids I'm seeing still for therapy are literally essential workers. They're working at grocery stores and they're putting themselves at risk. But they are essential to us. They're essential to our society, and they are, for me, you know, everyone should spend a minute to find out their purpose and their guiding principle, their why, because when you have a why, you're willing to lose it all. You're willing to walk through fire. You're willing to get hurt. You're willing to give up a professional identity when you have a why. And so I think it's one of the biggest jobs of grown-ups is to create spaces for young people to find out their why, because by God, we really need them now. These young people who are the hope of tomorrow, and just such an honor to work with still. So that's hard for me, thinking of that's my why, that's my professional identity. And when I think of, you know, having to lose that, that'll be a hard one. I'm not ready to get rid of that. And I may need to. So your turn, Future.
Well, here's my take on it. I have a couple of things in my mind. I love my profession, right? But I also know if my professions was going to tell me or say, Future, you have to like tone it down or be silenced on your activism or quiet, right? I can't do that. I can't do that right now. I'm not going to do that. I'm speaking up at my daughter's school. I'm speaking up for this world, right? And I have two little kids. I have two little kids that are depending on me. So if that means that whatever happens, it means whatever happens, but I'm no longer going to be silenced is the decision that I made. The other thing I think of is, and Aaron, maybe you to a point would say that you're allowed to do this. I think there's been a lot of people who are white who have had the opportunity, what I would call is being ignorant. And they say ignorance is bliss. And what I've come to learn is that some of the people are probably experiencing white fragility and their equilibrium of the whole racist actions and talks are throwing them completely off, because the opposite of ignorance is bliss is knowledge is painful. And now all this new knowledge that they have is truly painful for one, them to hear, and two, for them to actually sit with, because that's what we don't do as people. As people, we want to go to what you said, Aaron. A lot of times we want to numb, and that's numbing in social media, binge Netflix watching, numbing in alcohol, numbing in whatever, work, whatever it might be. And a person, and this is what I keep saying to everybody that I'm on this platform of saying, and this is what all the social emotional learning ties in. You have to be willing to sit with yourself and take a true look at yourself. What are your prejudices? What are your biases, implicit and explicit? What actions have you taken? What actions have you chosen not to take? What words and thoughts come to your mind at first? What are your last thoughts? What stereotypes do you feed into? Before you could come and have an honest, vulnerable, courageous conversation in regards to race and how to move the work forward. If you don't know yourself, it's going to be really hard. And you'll essentially then be inflicting even more trauma on the kids in your classroom, be inflicting even more trauma on the people that you work with, be inflicting even more trauma in the people that you serve in any community. So I think those are the things that people need to just sit with as themselves. I also think we need more people to be willing to lose it all. If everybody sits here at a stance and says, I'm not willing to lose anything, I guess I question then how much work and how many steps can we take forward? We will be at a standstill. What do you think, Tina?
Wow. Yes. We would be at a standstill because, you know, we're trying to have these conversations, and you hit it right on the head, Future. Being willing to sit with it as adults, just all of us, and really dealing with it first ourselves, because you're right, we don't want to perpetuate the trauma on the children. But if we never deal with it, that's what we're going to do. We're going
Correct.
to perpetuate that trauma. And that's the piece that we really want to confront. And so, we said a two-part series, but this might be, hey, we need to touch base. We may need to check in a half an hour, I don't know, but this is big. And here's the thing, this is beautiful. It's going to take us to do this together.
Mm-hmm.
My husband always told me the story about Nelson Mandela when he got out of the prison. The person who fought for him to get out of prison was not the same color. It was someone who's white, and they had to work together. And so we have to work together. And so we have to figure out how to be uncomfortable to deal with this stuff.
Yes.
And it's going to take us working together collectively.
Mm-hmm.
We've said so much today, and I'm going to finish on the hour, but what is one thing that you can say to wrap up and then to lead us into what to look forward to tomorrow? Future.
One thing. I think I would say I'm literally begging. If I could get on my hands and knees, I would be begging everybody to just sit with themselves. Sit with yourself and be true to who you are. Because I feel like I walked around here numb, right? Of wanting to just please other people and checking this box of who I think people should be, or here, let me fit into here, or if I do this, then I'll achieve that. And what I've understood about myself is this whole oppression and systematic racism, I fed into it too. So I was a piece of not speaking up when I saw things that were wrong, right? How many times did I past statues? How many times did I listen to people say something but didn't chime in? I was a part of the problem too. And I've basically stood in the stand at this point, mud, whatever you want to call it. And I've said, I'm not doing that anymore. So if I offend somebody, then stop being offensive, because I will sit here and politely and respectfully bring it to your attention of what you just did or didn't do or said, because people need to become aware. Some people are walking around here as walking zombies, literally with their eyes open, and we can't continue to have that. So I think for the betterment of yourself and for your children and your community, you need to stand in your beautiful lighthouse so you could shine, so other people will come to you, for the world to be a better place for all.
Wow, thank you, Future. That's powerful. Aaron.
My mother-in-law just asked my wife and kids and I to watch the PBS piece on John Lewis. And right before this program, we all sat down together and watched it. And one of John Lewis's phrases, statements was to get in the way. Mm-hmm. And to Future's point, I think it's hard to get in the way and to enact vulnerable, courageous change if you are numbed with fear.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So connect with good people, seek support, work through your fear so you can get in the way in a way that's effective, because it's needed right now more than ever. Mm-hmm. And so this gathering and this conversation is just a nice way, I think, for us to enact change in our own little ripple of a way. And I look forward to joining you both again tomorrow night to continue our conversation.
Absolutely, Aaron. Oh my God, this has been an amazing conversation where we've gone places that may not always feel good, but it's for the good. So we're going to continue this conversation tomorrow on the Bridge Broadcast Show, and we will dig a little deeper as we continue the conversation around COVID-19 and racialized trauma. Thank you all for being here today. We look forward to continuing on. And you know what? This may just be the beginning, because we are part of getting in the way, as Aaron just reminded us from John Lewis. All right. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks, Tina.
Yes. Thank you.